For the 6 and 8-inch chucks used on the ST10 and ST20, many people will choose to remove and install these smaller chucks without the aid of a hoist. The 6 and 8-inch chucks have integrated adapter plates already mounted to the back of the chuck, so the chuck comes off and goes on as one integral unit. Removal is similar to what we just showed for the larger 10-inch chuck on the ST30SSY. But let's review the important differences. Andrew e-stops the machine as the master jaws are unclamping and stops them at the midpoint of travel. Again, this places the draw tube and draw nut in an unbound state. He breaks the chuck screws loose, but doesn't begin taking them out yet. He removes the top jaws and chip cover. Now he needs to unseat the chuck from the spindle face and taper. A good tap with a dead blow hammer is usually all it takes with this size of chuck. Andrew removes the 6 chuck screws. Then he double-checks that e-stop is engaged. And since he doesn't have the aid of a hoist, Andrew uses his knee to support the chuck, making it easier to keep its weight off the draw nut as he finishes unthreading the nut. Remember, ensure the draw nut rotates without binding, or the draw tube and nut will be damaged. Now, let's look at an easy method for installing the 8-inch chuck on this ST20 when you don't have a hoist at hand. The 6 and 8-inch chucks are not very heavy, but you should never attempt to remove them without a hoist if you feel there is any chance your safety is at risk. Andrew begins by making sure all the chuck and spindle mounting surfaces are clean and free of burrs, and the draw tube and draw nut threads are lubricated with chuck grease. He actuates the draw tube to move it to the retracted position. We see the draw tube retract into the spindle bore and stop at the end of travel. E-stop the machine. He carefully lifts the chuck body, making sure to have a firm and secure grip. He finds one of the recessed pockets in the chuck's back face, which he will align to the spindle drive dog. He positions the chuck in his hands so the pocket is directly across from the drive dog. Andrew places the chuck delicately against the chuck face. Hold the chuck steadily in place with one hand while threading a chuck screw inwards until it is snug. Continue to thread in the remaining 5 chuck screws and snug all 6 screws hand tight. With the chuck attached to the spindle face, look into the chuck bore to check that the draw tube end and the draw nut are well aligned. Here we see the draw nut is sitting slightly forward of the draw tube end and looks well aligned to the draw tube, as we'd expect. Andrew engages the nut install tool and pushes it inwards until the draw nut gently touches the end of the draw tube. He begins threading the draw nut in the clockwise direction, feeling for any binding. If any binding occurs, the chuck should be removed and checked for cleanliness. Once the draw nut is threaded on about halfway, it will start to become tight to turn. Stop rotating. Actuate the clamp circuit so the draw tube begins opening to the extended position. E-stop the machine when the draw tube gets to the midpoint of travel. Now, continue tightening the draw nut until it bottoms out lightly against the draw tube. Next, rotate the draw nut back in the opposite direction 2.5 turns. Just as we did on the 10-inch chuck, a small adjustment in draw nut rotation may be needed to correctly align the travel indication marks on the chuck and master jaw. Check the indication marks in the clamped and unclamped states and adjust as necessary. With the draw nut set in its final position, Andrew installs the chip cover and one of the top jaws. Next, Andrew torques the chuck screws and installs the remaining top jaws.